He had a very profound spiritual experience that said that the problem of the future is transhumanism. The enemy is Ray Kurzweil. You think it's a disease, you're hyperactive, you're Asperger, most genius are dyslexic. But schizo-type role, in some other culture, they will be the shaman that are connected to the spiritual realm. But we live in a society where industrial model at school, everybody think the same, behave the same. Tesla as well understood it. That's why he was a mystic. He channeled information. I realized, shit, I have so much power over their lives. So I was really freaked out by this. Real understanding of human behavior is game mechanics. Ascension through spiritual awakening, or ascension through a chip in your brain, so you stop feeling anything. In a way, we're already there. Everyone's afraid to speak their own goddamn mind. We need to shift from judgment to understanding. Love first, unconditionally. All the philosophers that we remember now were not philosophers, they were ideonautes. It's not considered crazy, it's not a paradigm change idea. I think being narrow-minded is a disease, you're free, and so let's be more of us, because I think it will make for a better world. Noetic nomads.
Exactly, that's it. To another brand new episode of Noetic Nomads. I'm Albert Kim, living proof that alien life forms do exist. And with me today is someone who can be considered the epitome of a noetic nomad, a self-styled psychonaut who refuses to lay stranded on ideological islands and thus sets forth onto the seas of reality, charting new waters of experience, spirituality, and practice. This buccaneer of consciousness moved from working as a creative technologist, designing and developing for the likes of Google, Nike, Time Inc., Burberry, and Jaguar, to getting out of the matrix and into the world of love, light, and healing, spreading out into a disparate number of realms, such as the redesign of religion, delving into and synthesizing faiths ranging from Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, and Sikhism to alchemy, Gnosticism, and occultism. In his travels, he researched everything from psychology to screenwriting to energy healing and ritual magic. For years, he ran honesty meetups and inner fight clubs. He created a community of 1 million people through a photo painting app called Psychopaint, and even became co-leader of the UK Transhumanist Party in order to sanitize the ideology before it turned us all into mindless cyborgs. Nomads, please help me in introducing a most radical of thinkers and doers, an ideonaut helping us all find the truth to co-create the more beautiful world we all know is possible. I can be speaking about the one and only Max Goslin. Max, what's going on today,
awesome. Max? That was so good, man. Okay, lots of pressure. Okay, good.
Yeah, okay. I mean, like, I'm not gonna lie, like, preparing for an interview, I know we had a lot of technical problems beforehand. I don't know what the problem was that, but like in actual preparation for an interview, like this is honestly the easiest preparation I ever did, because all I had to do was read your intro. I'm like, okay, every sentence is a question. I'm like, what? Redesign of religion? What? Psychedelic experience? What? Magic? It's like everything you wrote was basically a question I could ask. So I'm very, very interested in this conversation and where this goes. Maybe we could start by letting these lovely people know, like, how it came to be that you, a psychonaut, came across this noetic nomad over here.
Well, through Rebel Wisdom, basically, you know, like I met you, I saw your profile, I said, oh, what do you do, noetic nomad? And we had a little chat, and it seems like you were interested in what I had to say, what I had to offer, and I have many things to say, many ideas to offer that I wish some people will pick up on. So it's beautiful. And then I checked your video, and I was like, oh man, so good. It's like the next Joe Rogan. It's because we get a lot of like smart sense-making conversation, but it's always very on the nose, you know. Yeah. And I found the way you ask questions, and it's entertainment meets intelligence, and you scream intelligence and passion, and I love it, you know. It's like it's beautiful. And then then I was like, this guy is crazy, he's my man. This guy is the
yeah.
So then I was like, I cannot just go without, you cannot out crazy me, basically.
Yeah, yeah. I was wondering, like, can I do it? And just like you showed me up with that right there. I mean, I have this crazy background, but you got that, and that's
Yeah.
definitely the first
No,
on
but
the
how did
show.
you make it move? Is it on Zoom?
Yeah, I mean, basically, I went to a site called motionarray.com, and they just have like
Mhm.
motion graphics. So this is
Okay.
like a 8 second like loop, and
Okay.
all you do is upload it to Zoom, and you could just have any video just loop over and over and over.
Oh, it's so
Yeah.
cool. Next time I try that.
Yeah, awesome.
Okay.
Yeah, you can upgrade it for the next time we have a conversation, or
Mhm.
you maybe you do your own show. So,
Mm.
so yeah, I mean, so many places where we can start. I mean, I don't even know where to begin, but perhaps, I mean, I could start with this question. Okay, so what did your parents do for a living, and how did that influence the path that you took in your life and career and your overall trajectory?
Well, my dad was a mechanics in a nuclear power plant.
Hmm. Okay.
Fixing stuff before it breaks. And I had the chance to work there as well, which was really interesting. And my mom was working for the electricity company as well in internal communication, communication.
Yeah.
But I think more important than just their profession, because we often define people based on what they do, for a living.
Yeah.
Is actually something really interesting. Is my mom is hyperactive ADHD and a bit schizotypal, and my dad is Asperger and dyslexic, and I'm kind of the four of them. So I'm like super hyper comorbid. I'm wired upside down in really interesting ways. You will think perhaps because it's something I want to say as well. You think it's a disease. You're hyperactive, you're Asperger. It's like you're not the way you're supposed to be. Huh? But I think it's complete rubbish. I think we're very social animals, and actually every kind of animals that is hyper social, let's say like ants and bees and whatever, they have specialities among them. So sometimes same genes, but the genetic marker makes it's a soldier or it's a nurse or XYZ.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking actually because it's almost like the same consistent type of profile among different culture. There's a certain bunch of Asperger, a certain amount of hyperactive, some schizotypo, and so on. I think it's more of a specialization of being. For instance, most genius are dyslexic. Most architects, most like really good designer are dyslexic. Steve Jobs was dyslexic, Winston Churchill was dyslexic. Then hyperactive people, most entrepreneurs are hyperactive.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Then Asperger, lots of developers, scientists are Aspergers. And then the schizotypal, well, unfortunately, it's like you can turn schizophrenic if you're schizotypal and you don't have good supervision. But it's the same as Asperger. If they don't have good supervision, they're made to feel shit about who they are because it's like they relate to the world very differently. But schizotypal, typically, in some other culture, they will be the shaman of this world. They are connected to the spiritual realm.
Yes.
Really, huh? But so they need to be taught, to stay on the ground, which they're not taught. It's like in fact, the very specificities of people, it's what makes them beautiful. Huh? But we live in a society where, everyone has to be the same, like industrial model at school. It's like, okay, everyone just shut up, listen. We consider everybody, ought to think the same, behave the same. It's not so much like we focus on races and black and white, but really inside our minds, there's so much different, let's say almost species. Huh? Like an Asperger do not think like a normal person, let's say, like a stereotypical. Anyway, that was just,
I love that, and I love that you called me out on my stupid game A like old world question. So, what did your parents do for a living? I was like, what am I doing? I just realized how stupid of a question that was. And there's so much there, and especially when you talked about the shaman, is because like I've been like, for example, like I was a lot of talk like Alexander Bard, he talks about the shamanoids, like this shamanoid archetype that like goes out and they go out to the different tribes and they speak to all these different tribes. Like they're like non-hierarchical and they bring all these tribes together. And I was speaking with one of my former guests and my friend from the Stoa, Aaron. He always talks and also talks about the shaman archetype and how they like, a lot of times they don't have children. And like, this resonated so much for me because I don't know if you watch some of my episodes where I went into some of my personal details. Like I'm celibate. Voluntarily celibate. On top of that, I'm a virgin. I've never been in a romantic relationship in my life. This is I don't like. It's not like I'm neurodivergent or I'm not typical. But like this is again like this is like some sort of like evolutionary like role that I'm playing, and it's just like what I'm doing right now may actually be like I was like activated, like this meta crisis, like this COVID thing, this meaning crisis, all these things happening right now. It's like, okay, now whatever's inside is like, okay, I'm activated, and my craziness in the old paradigm didn't work. Like I was not successful at all in the old world, but in this new world, I'm like, wait a minute, now I got something to bring, and I'm doing it right now. So yeah, so much there that I so align with you. Yeah, definitely.
But Nikola Tesla or Leonardo da Vinci, don't have time for women. And there's something interesting about men being celibate, which is not the same for women. So first for women, the term neurotic comes from Freud, which means not erotic. And it's a pattern that they noticed it, in the Victorian era, which is when women are not sexual, they become what they call at the time hysteric, hysteria. There was one diagnosis for mental health, it was hysteria. And there was one treatment, which was sexual stimulation, through orgasm, and it was a very successful treatment of hysteria. So in the sense that women actually, in order for them to be fulfilled, they need almost like a healthy sex life. Men, on the other hand, it seems like if they do not have sex, it's like they will go on an adventure. Like in a way, for the species to reproduce, to be perpetuated, you can have, let's say, one man that survive that will populate the species, right? So in a sense, you could say men are kind of like the R&D department of life.
Yes.
It's like first is the competition. In utero, think the sperm is like, it's like the best winner. So that's why men, I think, in this world, it's like competitive and whatnot, but it's especially adventurous. It's like, as a man, you live or you die, it's less important than, a woman who's more like at home, protecting her castle. And here I make an analogy, I try to see things from, what are the patterns between the macro and the micro, so the small and the big, as above, so below. And but in terms of scale, and when you look at a female, egg, it's gigantic compared to, to the male. But it looks like an impenetrable castle. And it reminds me of the archetype of, the princess. You will think that women are conditioned, girls are conditioned to love princesses. But I have a daughter, and it's just a natural thing for them, to identify with the archetype of princess. Over all the generation, all the cultures, like Moana, princess, Disney princess, always work. And but for men, it's the paladin. The man is the knight. Is the one who goes on a quest. So he goes on, like chase the dragon and whatnot. So it's very important for a man to go on a quest. But in the sense, like saving the princess, maybe sometimes it's either a byproduct of the conquest, or it's the object of the conquest. But I feel like what's very masculine, the essence of being a man, is not especially goal-chasing women, because you will notice, I don't know you personally, but actually, and I suffered for this, when you go and chase women, when you go directly tell a woman, oh, I'm gonna go for you, my lovely lady, she's gonna reject you straight away. Like women do not like this kind of attention. Women like a guy who's gonna go on a mission and they're gonna be like, yes, next, but not unless she's like extremely self-centered and she wants to be like a center of attention all the time. But that's more like a narcissistic personality disorder. It's not a natural state of affair. So I highly respect your way of being. It's cool.
Thank you so much. And there's so much there. Like I'm like listening to you, and then I'm just like screaming, yeah, yeah, because this is exactly what I'm doing. When you talked about like, there's so much synchronicity because I'm gonna let everyone know. So the next guest I'm gonna have on here, people may be aware if they're into the Stoa and whatnot. Raven Connolly. We have a talk scheduled next, and one of her projects that she's been talking much about is about the egg. Right, is about how like this is her project, and like how it's so important to her, like as a female, and to her personally, in order to reproduce and to continue the line. And it's very funny because that's something, she's a female, she's very much exemplifying, okay, my role is to quote unquote give birth.
Yeah.
And mine is like, I'm the complete opposite. I'm like, I'm not trying to quote unquote give birth to reproduce my genetic line, but what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to bring something else into being. So I'm in a sense, I'm trying to give birth to something else. And like the thing is, we're both, you mentioned that men, like we want to be on a quest, right? And it's like I'm a nomad, right? I'm going on my journeys and everything. You're a psychonaut, and like I would like to start getting into your journey, and like let's take it back. I mean, again, you stated about like, you talked about your parents and like how they were, neuroatypical, and maybe you manifest that a lot. So I was like, how did you get into all these different fields? And maybe we could start with how you first got into like your role as a creative technologist, and then what happened there, and then how you moved out from that realm.
Well, I've always been extremely creative and imaginative. I wanted to be a designer first, but my mom didn't thought it was a real job. But eventually, so I studied IT, telecom, and networks, which was actually really interesting. So I'm halfway between a geek and a kind of a creative. So that's what creative technologies is. So it's both developer and designer at the same time, and very front-end focus and a bit entrepreneur. It's a whole bunch of things. Then I specialized in multimedia into a notorious school in France called Les Gobelins. But then I started to work for like hip-hop bands, so music artists for Warner. Yeah, then I moved to London, and then so something really interesting happened to me. My life is full of really weird shit, but and I like to give some anecdote, just like this, because I think it's important. People should know those kind of stuff. Huh? So maybe it's off topic, but my first job in UK was for a company called Medical Information System. And it was in Golders Green, so the Jewish part of London. And, people dress with like hats and little swirly thing, and even kids and so on. And on Friday, there's no electricity in the shop. But it's fun, that it's like very safe area. And I did Krav Maga as well. I was well integrated. But it's like some dodgy shit happens there too. And so Medical Information System, their business was like stealing records, medical information records from patients and from doctors, who they are, where they live, their phone number, and then selling it to pharmaceutical companies. So they had lots of colors, and then they sell the leads, and it depends, the price, whatever they can, from maybe $10 per lead, per doctor, to $50 to whatever it is. And then the pharmaceutical company is going to send a sample of the product to this doctor, and that's it. And then they got busted, the whole company. Anyway, so, when you say, it's actually a small company, middle of nowhere, very discreet, and it's actually the center of lobbying of the pharmaceutical world. And no one heard of it. And anyway, it was an interesting experience. But then I worked for lots of big guys, SAP, Nike, Nokia, Burberry, all of this. But eventually, so I started a side project, which was just a photo painting application. And because I wanted to express my creativity. I was passionate about digital art, breaking the boundaries. What really drives me, the core of my being is exploration. Like you, I'm on a quest, bringing something new into the world. So for me, it was yes, there's a new field of digital art when you can make beautiful things with digital ribbons and whatnot. And I was inspired by other artists, and I wanted to do the same, but create better tools to do digital art. And eventually it became quite popular. And then I raised money to make it a business. And it was used a lot in art therapy, prison, rehabilitation center, and whatnot. And it grew pretty big in terms of community, but I couldn't make enough money from it. Then I had to sunset it. But something that really touched me to the core is like when I say, okay, I cannot continue, and breaks my heart. I receive lots of emails of people thanking me because it helped them in their life, deal with a teacher with autistic children, because it helps them express their emotion, or people in prison, because the community was very helpful as well. I created like a badging system. And that's where things, started to really be interesting, because people started helping each other based on how you design, the rules of the game. And it got me thinking a lot about this. So first, I was very proud, of all those compliments that I received, and I was like, that's the core of what I want to do. I want to help people. It's so good when you receive, thank you from someone, forget all the data and whatnot. This is the gold. But then after I had to pick up the pieces, I was a bit disheartened by this experience, and my wife went through some, big mental torments, and it got me to really, study. I've always studied, on the side, It's always we think about profession and titles and jobs and diplomas, but really is it always the best, either a descriptor of success or skills? Not always, but it's difficult. It's like you need some kind of social proof for people to, to give you some kind of credits. So it's good, okay, I work for those big brands, but it doesn't mean a thing as well. The thing I wanted to say is that something freaked me out when I was managing this community. So I started the company on my own. And for a year, 2 years, I was completely on my own. And I was the first one in Seedcamp and Techstars. So both like a famous incubator on my own. And I had like a community of 100,000 people, a crazy number that came every day. And through those, the newsletter that I sent, that was very funny, and people gave me so much attention, and I realized, shit, I have so much power over their lives. And what I learned as well, I had a mentor who was working for Zynga Boston. Yeah. They did farm deal. They did games that made people addicted, because they're in the business of attention. It's like they create behavior. So then I learned about behavioral design, which is the common ingredient behind Facebook, Instagram, and Snapchat. The three of them, they understood the magic formula of this guy, BJ Fogg, where they have the behavioral lab. How do you create behavior in people? So very early on, I was into shit. This is the bomb. Huh? Like people don't know they're being manipulated. Like when you understand people more than they understand themselves, and you're a designer, it's like you create something for them. Something that is adapted to them. But let's say everything is design. For instance, and that's what people don't think about. Like a Big Mac is a design. Like a chef designed a Big Mac for you to be addicted to it, so you come back and it's got all the MSG and all that crap. That's good for them because they're gonna buy more of this. Good for you in terms of your health, it's secondary, because they have shareholders, they have whatever. So I was really freaked out by this. It's like, oh my God, with the point system, the badging system, people go crazy over those things. It's like intrinsic reward, extrinsic reward. So it's the joke in entrepreneurship is like the three things people want is get paid, get made, get laid. So it's like attention, status. Everyone wants attention. Everyone wants status. That's why Twitter, that's why Facebook, all of this is a business of attention. Get paid, of course, it's very simple. You want to eat, and also it's a kind of social status as well. Even though I think it's not the one we should focus on. And then get laid. 40% of the internet is porn. 40%. Huh?
Yeah.
And it's completely unaddressed. Huh? So what makes you look cool? Tinder, all of this, And then it's like you have levels of people. Like game mechanics. Actually, it's like, let's say World of Warcraft. It's pretty boring. Huh? It's like there's a little critter. My turn. His turn. It's not even interactive. It's like slow. But then what makes it interesting is the leveling up. I level up, I go up, I go up, I go up.
Yeah.
And it's kind of give a sense of progression. And so I've been thinking about that. Actually, psychologists, are so late, so outdated with their model of Jung and whatever. Real understanding of human behavior is game mechanics. Understand game mechanics, you understand how, because you understand the game design, you understand how to get people to do something that you want them to do. But also, there's something else, which is you can potentially, and that's the good part, you can potentially make them something super good. So for instance, Foursquare was all game mechanics. If you remember Foursquare, it's like you go to a place and then you just check in, you get a badge, and then it's like a badge collection. And all it was is the status. Humanity, the problem of humanity right now is a giant cockfight. It's like everyone wants to look good. Everyone wants to look good. The reason why is like we're a narcissistic society. And why we are a narcissistic society is because we perpetuate our traumas. So the number one expert on narcissism, who coined the terms 30 years ago, I forgot his name, but I went to see him and I asked him for the essence of why it is that makes people narcissistic. It's just a wound. It's an internal wound. It's a lack of self-love that you actually put a mask on and you pretend, I'm fine, I'm good. And people wear different masks. So some people is like a clown mask, like the alcohol dissociate you. There's so much thing to say. I don't know where to start. So those game mechanics, I was like, shit, this stuff is so dangerous. And Facebook, of course, used it. So I was aware of Cambridge Analytica as well. I was part of this group called London Futurists for many years. And there you see people that talks about the future in a hypothetical way. So it's like, isn't it really, really important for people to try to forecast what could happen in the future? And you could say it's very difficult. Yes and no. Some trends that are so consistent, like Moore's Law, is very easy to predict. Moore's Law is like every 18 months, you double the capacity of chips, of processing power. And so there's lots of Moore's Law like this. One of them, for instance, but it's because progress is exponential. It's not linear, but so we don't see it coming. But when you can see the trend, it's like there's 5 different world-threatening trends happening at the same time that people didn't talk about, And that was the inception of the Transhumanist Party, which I was the first member, and then I became a co-leader later on. And in truth, it's like, and it's going to join my psychonautic experiments. I had a very profound spiritual experiences on psychedelics that, in a way, taught me about the future and said that the problem of the future is transhumanism. The battle of the future is transhumanism versus, let's say, humanism, but a return to the source, back to the source. It's either ascension through spiritual awakening, or ascension through I put a chip in your brain, so you stop feeling anything, but in a way we're already there. Like we're already completely addicted to our technologies, but it's the technology by people like me, who design stuff for you to be addicted, well, because they're shareholder, because, and of course it's the whole machine, because even guys like me, I have to feed myself. I have a family to provide. So it's the game that everyone's on. No one dares to bite the hand that feeds them, right? You're a dog. You're not going to bite because it's a kind of a prison. Huh? It's like when you're a child, sometimes you have a good father, sometimes you don't. But it's got so much power over you because where are you going to run away? What are your alternatives? What are your options? But for me, I have the chance that I'm a developer. I have quite a few options, so I can tell people to go fuck off and work for things I want, in a way. But at some point, I was like, it's not the best that I can provide in my life. With the skills that I have, And then I'm gonna switch to my psychonautic adventures.
Yeah, definitely would love to hear about that. Yeah.
Yes. Sorry, I do not let you ask questions.
No, I mean, like you're answering my questions for me, but I would like to touch on a little bit about like, yeah, I read as part of your intro that you were co-leader of the UK Transhumanist Party, and this is very interesting because I consider myself as quote unquote, I align myself maybe with transhumanism before, but more so in like the spiritual realm, like kind of like there's this like this vein, this line running between you and me. That's the same. It's like it's more as like define who we are like spiritually and how we define ourselves and all that. But what it has become, and some people like for example Rachel Haywire, who's actually a presidential candidate for the U.S. Transhumanist Party, who I'm familiar with, and she talks about how like the Transhumanist Party in the U.S. basically became like an immortality cult. You're like, okay, how do we make sure that we don't die and like we create like this technological womb where we don't like, it's like it's a very tech bro Silicon Valley culture where we don't have to be like upstanding men who have to go out and do and have like stand for virtues or values. We don't have to do all that. We could just create our own digital girlfriends. We could create a robot, sex slaves, and we could just retreat into like a little computer where we're safe from all this other stuff and not have to delve into the spiritual realm. So like I was curious again, maybe we could tie all this together about this vision you had perhaps on psychedelics and with transhumanism, and what you say is like the direction, like where is transhumanism taking us, and what is this vision that you had that maybe you were a little appalled by?
Well, first, it's really interesting, but transhumanism means lots of different things to lots of different people. Because it's a kind of a new term, new ideology and whatnot. But the origin comes from Dante's Inferno. And Dante is a notoriously Gnostic Christian. So not Catholic Christian, Gnostic Christian. And it's a metaphor for how do you get into the purgatory, go into your inner world, win your own inner battles in order to ascend. It's an ascension metaphor. But you have to go through hell first before you get up.
Yes.
But the idea of this transhuman is the one who transcended his shadows, his mediocrity, let's say, as a human being. Because it's considered as human in the Christianity. It's like humans are kind of guilty. They're not good just the way they are. It's very part of the original sin. Like we sin, we fucked up, and now we have to get our way back up. After he was picked up again by Huxley. So the doors of and then later on by Max Tegmark and the new transhumanists. But for Huxley, he was more breaking beyond the doors of perception. So he was more of a psychedelic version of transhumanism. And then for Max Tegmark, he was more of a technological version of it. Because it's like, he was prophesized, that we will reach eternal life. So actually, a lot of transhumanists are Christian. There's a big Christian transhumanist movement. There's Mormon transhumanists, because for them it's like, well, that's the way to achieve eternal life. But it's not my interpretation. And it's true, American transhumanism compared to British transhumanism is completely different. That's why I was very conflicted about it. And I respect highly David Wood, who I was co-leader with. And he's a very smart individual, very well measured. And for us, he was more thinking in terms of the responsibility of a politician ought to be a prevention, because the life of people has been changed a lot more by technology, by this, than any politics. It's technology who changed the life of people. But because everything is going so fast and faster, it's like we worry so much, we only ask question of how. How do we live forever? How do we get better? We cure cancer, we get younger, we get like cosmetic, how we look better, cosmetic surgery, but we don't ask the question of why. And should we do it? To begin with? In fact, I came into this because I had this vision 12 years ago. I was like, the enemy is Ray Kurzweil. Ray Kurzweil, Like I think sometimes you got lots of sense makers who are afraid to make speculations, and I think we should make speculations. Like theories, like even if it's crazy, Science fiction is actually in a way alarm system for like pay attention to this. Maybe it's just a story, but still, So even if it's just a vision, even if I'm insane, perhaps, So hypothetically, an old man will decide, well, I'm dead now. So what am I gonna do? I'm super fucking rich. I have my friend in Google. I have the best AI in the world. I'm gonna merge with the machine. I'm gonna plug my brain into a super high interface. So it's not Robocop. I just have a walking body, like a robotic body. No, I'm plugged to the machine, to the internet. I become hyper logical. Because you see, AI now, even if it's not a general AI, it doesn't have a will of its own. And that's the thing, we don't know how to break. And we think like, maybe it's great to break it. But maybe it's Skynet. It's like, and we talk about it. Yeah, maybe it is, maybe it's not. Which is the Pandora's box that's gonna fuck us all? Sometimes we open Pandora's box and that's it. The nuclear bomb, okay, it's a very small Pandora's box actually, because it's like, okay, it explodes just here, but that's it, right? But imagine, you saw Nagasaki and Hiroshima, okay, it destroyed lots of people. So after, it's like, okay, let's not open the Pandora's box again. But they opened it already. Now it's just a small one. Imagine a big Pandora's box, you just open one of them. And there's a few of them. So nanotechnologies, for instance, let's say, you want to fix yourself from the inside, so like small nanorobots, and then it's like they can reproduce. And then to reproduce, they need some iron. So they're gonna collect the iron from your body, and then maybe they're gonna eat you from the inside, and then they're gonna, It's just hypothesis. It's very unlikely, but it's not null. So it's like, perhaps coronavirus is the result of, what we're playing now, which is a lot of genetic engineering. Yeah. So now, before genetic engineering was only a few sets of, big companies, Monsanto, notably, who sterilize the crop and then give it, so you have to buy the seeds, and so people fucked up. I mean, they have to buy again, they are in constantly this cycle. But now it's like, you can do genetic engineering for $1,000. You buy a CRISPR machine, there's no regulation on this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So you're like, shit, maybe tomorrow, people, there's a bunch of biohackers who just, for them, life. So that's the thing. I think we live in a society that's like, we think there's 3 billion Christian, but I think it's a satanist, it's nihilist satanist who thinks they're Christians. Because real Jesus Christ, why was he crucified to begin with? It's because he kicked the stalls of the merchant temples. Yeah. In other sense, in modern day, the corporatocracy and the bankers. Pretty much, Yeah. If you're Christians and you're not anti-capitalist, you're not Christian. Yeah, exactly. You don't focus on what really matters into it's the one thing he was ready to die for. You can say lots of things, but what you were ready to die for says a lot about you, right? So if he was ready to die for his belief that, the merchant should not be here in the temple, even if he was, or he said, I'm the son of God, and the Jewish are not happy about that. Yeah, maybe that's my other subject. It's like redesigning religion.
Oh, that's exactly, you read my mind, because that's exactly what I want to get into, because there's so many, because like I was having a conversation yesterday on the Intellect Discord. Like we were talking about like, this is all happening right now. Like I just released an episode on New Year's Eve with Simon Vorster, friend of Monica. I believe you had a long chat with her the other day, I was told.
Yes.
And Simon, he goes into how like we're moving from the age of Pisces, where we looked above to align ourselves with some universal truth with God. Now this new age where it's like, oh, now we're coming to grips with, like, we make room for individual truth. It's not about aligning with this one God, this one truth, and with Christianity and like Jung and all this stuff, and like and religion brings into it. And religion, obviously, the last 2,000 years, Christianity was like this defined our age. So now, I mean, I would very much like to go into your endeavors with redesigning religion, and there are a lot of different threads that I came across, and so I would like to see, like, how did you look at like religion being the vector that you wanted to focus
on? So first, because I'm a very creative guy and very divergent, I love to do the things that no one does. That's my thing. And I've always been like this. Since I was a child, I was like an animal. I was behaving like a little, like a cat or a dog. I'm a crazy guy. And I said, I'm going to write a book. So I wrote like automatic writing. I write whatever. I don't censor myself. No censorship whatsoever. Because, it's like your prefrontal cortex is the skeksis. If you saw the Dark Crystal, for me, it's the best metaphor to understand the human mind, actually. It's like everyone is governed by the skeksis. Skeksis says no, judge, skeptical mind. And then you have the mystical mind. Mystical mind is yes to everything. Yes. And so I started to write a book. I don't know, I'm going to write a random book. No one ever wrote a book that's random. And I tried to break all the pattern about writing a book. Pretty much the most random book ever written. And then I thought, well, maybe people would be interested. I sent it, but I'm like, I don't have time for marketing. Next level, a green edition of the random book. I can only write on cannabis. So I started to write my random book on cannabis, to notice, like, what is the difference between me writing a random book on coffee and pizza versus I write it on cannabis. But it's like, with the intention of me being random as I can possibly be, it's really hard. Huh? It's like we all get into some patterns of thinking, like tick, tick, tack, tack. We're in the matrix and we're in the clocks. So to try to break your own patterns of thinking, it's like you get into a state of constant metacognition, of meta-awareness about yourself, which is pretty much the work of the mystic. The mystic, the meditation, there's so many ways to do metacognition. My meditation is like sometimes writing, and I'm like, and I write thousands of pages and whatnot. And it just comes from, I don't know where. It's like channeling. Then after it's like channeling. And then I'm like, the insight that I got from it were like, wow, it's really interesting. Because it's like I step outside of my own way of being. I'm in the flow, like completely. I lose myself completely. I write for hours and hours. And then I don't know what I'm writing. And when I read what I write, and I'm like, wow, it's actually really interesting insight into the deep nature of reality. But I don't know if it's true or not. But it's like, wow. And then I was like, what's the craziest thing I could do? Like as a thought experiment. People don't ask themselves those questions. It's like, what is the craziest thing that you could do that is still kind of legal? And I was like, what is the thing that no one else will dare to do? Because I'm kind of a guy who just doesn't really care too much about his social status. I've been in so many bubbles. It's like sometimes I'm the top dog, sometimes I'm at the bottom. But most of the time I'm detached from it. And I like to see, to be an observant of the social game. It's what gives me the most joy in a way, And that's why when you said, you're a virgin and you like to step outside, in fact, the role of the shaman is a bit of this. Because in a way, the shaman works for social cohesion. You need a shaman. And I've been to a rainbow gathering recently. So it's kind of like an anarchist community living in the woods for a few moments. And it's always go into chaos because people's ego go after each other or whatever. So I was like, yes, I'm going to come as a secret shaman. But the thing is, like, I cannot, be into like a social relationship. I have to be detached because otherwise, if I get involved, I am biased into it. No, I want, as a goal, I want to create social harmony between those group of people. But I don't want them to know that I'm doing this, like a secret agent. Because it comes from my conundrum as well. I've learned hypnotherapy, and fucking hell, man. Hypnotherapy is the best way to heal someone's mind. We've got so much focus on psychiatry and psychology, but studies have shown, meta-analysis from 2005 has shown that by far, hypnotherapy blows any other kind of form of mental health treatment. After this, like psychedelics and like plant medicine. But basically, we got the whole damn thing wrong. But because we have the mental blockage of like hypnosis, like stage hypnosis, like it's gonna control me. People are afraid of control, of being controlled. The reality is like they're already controlled, they're already brainwashed. No, they're brain dirty. Their brain is dirtied with fucking shit in their brain, you know? And the role of the hypnotherapist is brainwash, but because their brain is so dirty with shit, you know? So then I was like, okay, I'm gonna leverage my experience as a designer and developer. But developer, in a way, it's like you have design patterns as well. It's kind of, you design ideas, you design your code, and I always like to design my code in different ways. But there's like certain patterns, like model view controller, and so on. And so I was thinking, where could I apply my skill as a designer? Because I know, okay, I've sent lots of projects from zero to hero. I'm good at that. I understand people. I understand how people work. It's a power, and I can create software that millions of people are gonna use, you know, and I can do it again and again, not all the time, but I did it again, little project, and that was the last call for me, like a wake-up call. I was working for a music messaging company, and then on the side, my boss was never listening to me. I was like, okay, I'm gonna do my own thing. 2 days it took me. I did like a bot on a Kik that you could send at vid, and then I'll be back. And then you have the video of Schwarzenegger say, I'll be back. Or like, you know, memes, but with sounds. And like automatic, you know, as you write, you get, and he went like super big very quickly. I mean, Kik is dead now. But at the time, he went super big very quickly, like 10,000 users from first day. And I'm like, shit, I could start another company with this. Like some people raise shitloads of money for much less than this. The other day I saw like $50 million they raised for an app of like audio messaging or whatever. Anyway, and they just have 1,000 users. Anyway, it's mental in Silicon Valley, it's crazy. But I was like, is it how I want to spend my life? And you know, the skills that I have, I believe in myself. I think I'd like to believe, you know, I have some badges over there, so, you know, I've done some good shit. But that's how can I apply this to something meaningful? Not get to brainwash people, to brain dirt people, to mind control them, to give them some shit that, you know, will keep them addicted on their toes. And no, let's do the opposite of that. I have plenty of ideas on the subject. So I was thinking of this concept of what's the next step in terms of design. So after behavioral design, perhaps ideological design. So if you think about, say, communism, fascism, Nazism, capitalism, Christianism, all the ism, they're all ideologies. You know, they're all a bunch of ideas put together with some kind of consistent glue, but often there's like one guy at the exception. Even capitalism is Adam Smith, yes. The Wealth of Nations. And even if you read the book, it's not exactly how it's implemented. You see, it's very interesting how, even just from Adam Smith, his ideas are being perverted through time just to perpetuate a chain of power. And that's the common pattern with religion. Religion are never, ever created by the spiritual leader. It's not Jesus who created Christianism. Okay, Mohammed is a kind of an exception. Mohammed really, because he was political and whatnot, kind of really created Islam, brought the thing. But Buddha, no, it was not his intention to create Buddhism or the Hindus or the Vedas or even Lao Tzu or Confucius. In their times, they were not that popular. It's always after, okay, they gain popularity because it takes time for ideas to spread. But now it's like, ideas spread so fast, okay, shit, okay. So because ideas spread so fast, it's like, what is gonna be the one ideology that's gonna really be the best operating system for the world to move forward? And now it's like you have all these different operating systems that are kind of competing with each other. And you see the big one is like, okay, capitalism, Western capitalism versus almost like, China, communist China.
Yeah.
So individualism versus communism, and also, let's say, the Middle East, which is, let's say, religious fanatism in a way. There's still a spiritual beauty sometimes in the Middle East that we miss as well. Like, you have also to think from the perspective of your enemies, understand them. Like, why are they in the way that they are? And people are always fanaticized when they're hurt.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I will argue that Chinese as well. So I put violet glasses, but for a reason they're violet. It's because violet is visions glasses. When you watch a movie, they put a filter. If you take a normal photo, it's kind of boring. But you put a filter on it, it gives a mood. And kind of the chakra system is like this, the electromagnetic field that we see is what we call light. And anyway, so when I put those, for instance, it will influence my thought patterns. Like, I wear a different lens, my mind thinks differently. So everyone in the world have different lenses. You say you have your truth, I have mine. I sort of disagree with this statement, but it's my perspective. I think perhaps truth, what I consider is truth, and I will hope that at least this one idea we could agree upon, and I think that will be the base, like what are the common basic ingredients we can all agree upon, with all our disagreement, with all our diversity of human beings, what are the one thing we can agree upon, if it's possible? And so it's like, what is the common truth that we can have? And I think first is to understand that Mahomet did not have monopoly on truth. As soon as you go dogmatic around this is the truth, this guy is right, turns to shit.
Yeah.
Turns to shit. Because when you're completely convinced that you're right, you don't have to think. You don't have to use your processing. That's what makes people into mindless robots, and so easy to manipulate, because there you go, the truth, and then the priest or the techno priest now, they just throw whatever, and people swallow. They don't think for themselves. So what I am an advocate of is the opposite. Is actually the real Christianity is Gnostic Christianity.
Yeah,
because who created Christianity? Well, is Constantine. The emperor, the Roman emperor, Constantine, is the one who curated all the books to create what we call Christianity. And then, some books, let's not keep those, like the Book of Judas, and so on. Also to note that the first books were written like 60 years after the death of Jesus. 60 years, so I don't even remember what I ate yesterday. So imagine, but they found those documents in Egypt, in Nag Hammadi, that comes from the Essenes. So from the people that Jesus was a part of, that notoriously talk about the teaching of Jesus after his resurrection. And the story that is being told is completely different. And that's why maybe when perhaps the Christian establishment and the popes and whatnot, when maybe they have heard of it, it's like, we find new documents in Egypt, we know they're legit, but they completely contradict everything that the church has been said for 2,000 years. What are you gonna do about it? Are you gonna tell people? No, you don't. And so the Gnostic Christianity is funny, because the guardian of Gnosticism were the Cathars, the French good Christian that we called. And they're the good guys because they're the one who have been persecuted, by the bad guy. Who kills who? Who's the bully? And those were their tradition was not just Christian, like what Jesus said, is Hermetic tradition. The heretic are the Hermetics. The keeper of the alchemy, Hermes, was the messenger of the gods of the Egyptians, is the one who brought alchemy forward. But alchemy, spiritual alchemy first. So in the Middle Age, the alchemists, they understood they had to hide, because Christians, otherwise you do something too out of the system, oppressive system, oppressive, and it's always in the name of keeping order. So transforming lead into gold is metaphorical. The philosopher's stone is metaphysical. It's not a stone, it's like how do you get someone from their state of being, maybe it's like a heavy, traumatized, to gold, into someone who's like hyper efficient, empowered. Gnosticism is actually shamanism of like let's get people to go on their own path, their own destiny. It's not preaching to you, it's guiding you, and it's completely different. It's like, here is a bunch of tools, and first I'm gonna heal you. Jesus is a healer. Jesus is a healer. Buddha was more of a spiritual explorer, and then this is the formula. For you, just go, this is my path, but you, maybe it's different. And it's the same with Buddha and Jesus, they were both psychonauts. They were a spiritual explorers. Explorer of the mind, explorer of the psyche or whatever. And that's one of the visions that I had. In my own exploration, I got some wisdom from
source.
I don't know where.
Yeah, somewhere. Yeah.
I have because there's still noise on the line, but I have my own interpretation. So, for instance, the Gnostic. So the Matrix is a Gnostic metaphor. And there's a metaphor of the chosen one, and whatever, but it's a metaphor for ascension, for like how do you break out of the archon, so the bad guys for the Gnostics, I should say for the Essenes and the Cathars, is what they call the archons, and they say they're aliens. So of course, for the Christians, like, what do you talk about aliens and whatnot? This goes too crazy, because it discredits everything. My own interpretation of it, and perhaps that's completely new, it's just speculative. I try to connect dots in interesting ways. And I think it relates to, it's just a vision I had. So Satan is Saturn. Saturn.
Yeah,
so I was trying to understand, astrology is like, I'm trying to go to the base. Okay, maybe I don't understand astrology, what it is, but what's the reason that it could work? Potentially. It's like, okay, we've got an electromagnetic field, it's like a donut.
Yeah.
And in fact, we get it from our biggest ancestry. So we always think of our ancestors as monkey, but you have to trace back all the chain of evolution to the first bacteria, and then the first multicellular living entities, which was the microtubule. All living animals come from the microtubule. All animals. That's our common ancestors to all animals. And it's just a tube. And you see, it doesn't have eyes, it doesn't have nothing, but it knows where it is, based on the electromagnetic system. So it's like the base of who you are is like this, something comes in, something comes out. Input, output. And that's why the gut health is so important. Your bacteria, it's like second brain is also the gut. As above, so below. If your gut is not healthy, your brain is not healthy. It's like inside you have a war, but it's both a bacteriological war and it's an energetic war as well. So my inception is like, so it goes into different realm, but it's the same thing. Like the base of life is not just flesh and bones. And that the Gnostics understand this as well. It's energy. When you're dead, you're out of energy. Your body's still there, but your light, your electricity, what I call the electrical serpent, I think I got it from Jordan Peterson. Who you are is your electrical serpent. So you think I'm this fixed identity, but you change at every single moment. You're more of a loop, a cycle. You're constantly in flow. And I think the problem, and they understand it in acupuncture, is like when the flow is blocked or parasited. It's like someone in the river of life put some obstacles. It's like, okay, I'm going to make a theme park here, like a water slides. And I think actually the new metaphor, and that's crazy, but it was one of my ideas that came up that I channeled, was like, actually, life is not the Matrix. It's the Lego movie. I don't know if you see the Lego movie. So at the top, there's Lord Business. Lord Business, Satan, Santa Claus is like the crab, who grab everyone by the throat It's like a parasite, energetic parasite, but like from behind, to the throat for men, and for women, it's in their ovaries. For women, it's like, there is space here, I'm gonna go. So women cannot have full body cosmic orgasm until they have treated their traumas. Interesting, huh? Like women believe that, actually, it's a clitoris stimulation that's gonna get them to orgasm. The truth is, when you look at Tantra, it's no. When you have safe space, you create a safe space. Woman is in good condition, is safe, you've taken care of their trauma, the blockage in their energetic blockage. She can have cosmic orgasm. Like cosmic, and it's the most beautiful thing in the universe. Huh?
Yeah, Max, I gotta jump in right now because you just synthesized 8,000 different things that is all like I agree with. It's all happening right. You talk about Tantra, full body orgasms, blockages, like prana, I have a workshop on Saturday with Tia, who's a member of Rebel Wisdom. I just released my third part of our series on Tantra. And this is exactly what we were talking about. She's talking about the blockages, bringing the energy, the toroidal field that goes like this. Right. Everything you're talking about, every single thing you're talking about is what you're talking about. And like also, again, like we're talking about, you talk about Saturn. What is it with Saturn? Like there's many different.
Yes. Okay. So this is where I wanted to go because it's so Saturn. So the occult tradition. That's why it's really interesting to go study your enemy. The occult traditions venerate Saturn as Satan, Lord of the Ring, the eye in the sky, because actually Saturn looks like an eye. If you have a telescope, it looks like an eye. Eye in the sky, looking at you, I can read your mind.
yeah.
I am the maker of rules. So I don't know, possibly, but because it's like in my psychonautic travels, so it's like psychedelic as well. Is so we say drugs or whatever. Drugs is a term invented 150 years ago only. Before there was no drugs or nothing. Alchemists called catalyst. So like you put something in your body, it's got a reaction, it's changed your mind. It's a catalyst. So it's a catalyst for an inner media. It's like, this is a media, video. It's a media for looking inside. It's like the TV to look inward is a psychedelic. It reveals your mind. To note as well that democracy, Plato, Socrates, all of this, what was the catalyst to bring those ideas forward was the Kikeon, which was a brew derived from honey, but most especially the ergot, which is a parasite. But it's basically LSD. So LSD is derived from this very mushroom parasite that grows on barley. LSD. So you think that actually the groundbreaking ideas that Plato, Socrates put forward were actually came through some psychedelic experiences. Boom. And then Jesus, so the Cathars, for instance, who revendicate themselves, the reincarnation, so as well, believe in reincarnation, Gnostic Christian, which the Christian Catholic do not believe in. It's actually a very great idea to believe in, independently of if it's true or not, to believe in reincarnation. Because it's like, well, it doesn't matter if I die, because I'm gonna be reborn if I want. Actually, if I ascend, maybe I'm on holidays. As opposed to what they give in Catholic, it's like, well, you're gonna go to hell, if you don't behave. And it's this eye in the sky as well, the judgment. And I think actually, so I've done honesty meetups as well. So it's like, I'm trying to discover what's behind, what people project, but what's really going on. The subconscious versus the conscious. And by time, like men, women tell me some stuff that it's as if everyone, it's my perspective, pretty much, everyone is terrorized by the judgment of others. And we are all judging each other. And that's the big problem. We need to shift from judgment to understanding, to non-judgment. As a real love is non-judgment. It's like, no, I love you only if you're, like parents, I love you only if you've got an A. No. You know, Tiger Mom, you don't love your children if you think like this. Huh? Love first, unconditionally, unconditional love. And it's like, but you can love some people more than others, but it's energetic. It's like, it's just like that. You can't give too much condition of it. After, there's circumstances that might change it. Huh? But, so what I saw in my travel, it was like almost like the Emperor in Star Wars. And I think the spiritual world, you don't take it literally, you take it in metaphors.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, let's say, how do you translate from another species, you know, to your own? Well, maybe they're not, you know, your body, because we know we live in a tiny spectrum of the electromagnetic field. You know, it's like what we see as light is what's bouncing upon the structure of things that are tangible. Right? That's it. Huh? But maybe up there and down below, there are other things that live. You know, specters. It's a spectrum. Specters. Maybe in the sky, you know, the Native American, I have a Native American mentor for a brief time. He did not believe in illness as like just little pieces. It's more like, what's the spirit? Little pieces is just the physical manifestation of that spirit. Anyway, and possibly if we're spirit first and the matter later, you know, just like ants. So some ants, you know, some ants go top of leaf and then they go commit suicide. You're like, why would they do this? Huh? So it's like either a mushroom or like little bacteria who can parasite someone, you know, they are not aware that they have a parasite. Huh? You know, all the stuff like the weight that you have on your shoulder, like we said, the weight you carry on your shoulder, or like the tension here, or you see, like if your fingers crack, you still have your body armor. So there's another branch of psychology from William Reich. That talks about this energy, life force, organ, chi, prana. It's all the same. It's all the same. But it's energy, it's energetic, it's electromagnetic. That's all. Huh? Tesla as well understood it. That's why he was a mystic. He channeled information. That's how he got the idea for his machine. Huh? Tesla was a mystic. People don't know those important things. Huh? So that's why I wanted to follow the path of Tesla. It's like, I'm not gonna just get knowledge from what people say, but directly from the source. And Tesla believed this as well. There's like a source you can connect. So the matrix is a metaphor. It's like when it's a work of love, it's like it's beyond just your imagination. It's like you take it, this truth that's hidden. There's like a translation, and that's the metaphor that we relate to. So the biggest one nowadays is Star Wars and the Matrix. Huh? But I will argue the Lego movie is almost like one of the most relevant metaphors that we have to explain the world, which is everyone is like a Lego, everyone is stuck into their own profession, they believe that who they are is their identity, they cannot step out of their box, huh? And outwardly, you know, everything is awesome, but inside is a fucking mess. So everyone is dissociated, it's like everyone is a zombie, it's like the head is disconnected from the body. The native Australian, when they saw white people, they said they're zombies, because they saw electromagnetically, they were still tied to the earth, they were grounded. So for them, white people or all the invaders is zombies. And they don't know they're zombies. Right? So imagine that entire culture that do not listen, that is completely stuck into their own box, detached from the earth, from Mother Earth. And that's the thing. So what happened, I think, to me, where I get this information, I think it's from Mother Earth. Like from Mother Earth and from the sun. You know, like you think of God, huh? God is just an idea, and because they all have different ideas. Huh? So let's go back to something tangible. It's like you're on a big ball, you're connected to this electromagnetic field. Normally, if you don't have your chakras blocked, you know, like alchemy is not like you add more stuff, you take some vitamins, you go up, you become, you put something in your brain, you go up. No, you remove all the crap inside of you, you become enlightened. Remove all the crap inside of you, go into the cave that you fear to enter, and that's why Dante's Inferno is a metaphor. You go to the purgatory. You have to. It's like that. And it's painful, but that's the path towards and because everyone is in a comfort bubble all the fucking time. And so, and you see, people are docile when they're afraid. And everyone's afraid, but it's silent. Everyone's afraid to speak their own goddamn mind. Everyone's afraid to bite the hand that feeds them. You go on the street, you're not gonna starve. Like in UK, you are, or in France, you have a bit of benefits, not a lot. You live in a caravan. I did that for last year. I'm fine. I don't need much money to be happy. I need nothing at all. I have all the time in the world to socialize, and I'm so happy. But I've got nothing, and they stole all my stuff as well.
Yeah.
Nada.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I just want to jump in. Yeah, like of course, I don't resonate with that so much. Again, like this Noetic Nomads thing, like I was able to do all this because over the summer when COVID hit, I was like, I was working for a tech company in New York City, and I was like, oh my God, you're doing amazing. It's like, why don't you head up our sales division in Boston? And I was just like, nah, I don't want to do that. And I just left. And then when the pandemic hit, I was like, okay, this is an opportunity. I'm just going to go to Rebel Wisdom. I'm going to take their Sense Maker 101 course. I'm going to go to the Stoa. I'm going to do tons of inner work. And I just went in for months and months. And I was like, in September, I was like, okay, I'm ready. I went inside. Noetic Nomads. I make no money in this. 2021 hits. You know, like right now we're doing like a one-on-one episode. But what I want to do for 2021, it's like, okay, it's like I individuated. It's like I found myself to another point. And through Noetic Nomads, I'm finding myself even more. And what I want to do in 2021 is I want to lift everyone up. Like I want to start having people, I want to start, boosting their projects. I want to create projects with them. So like this is all like this all happened from
that's exactly what we need. We need people like you, because it transpires, like I like to think I know people, and it transpires to you. You're passionate, you're a true lover. That's exactly what we need. We need, it's like I say also another metaphor I use is how to train your dragon. How to train your dragon. You see, it's like Omega is the good alpha. Omega is like they said, the little geek who's creating a good heart. You want the king of heart to win. You don't want the king of the mirror, like, oh, look at me, I'm so beautiful, the narcissist, Donald Trump. Look at me, I'm so fucking great, I'm gonna fix everything. No, you're the king from below, the king who distributes the heart. And that's beautiful, because I checked your video. And I love your energy. I'm like, yes, we need crazy people like you. And thank you for doing what you did. I mean, and I think it's an example for people. Just fucking quit your job and do what you really believe in your heart. You don't need much money to be happy. Like, you look very fulfilled right now. You look like on fire, like you want to change the world. And we need that. It's so beautiful to see.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, it's not surprising, because it was just like, you wrote your post and I was like, oh my God, we're like, I don't know, we're like two like sparks. We're like, I don't know, we're like quantumly entangled or something. We're like, I don't know, because I was like, oh wow, like, the Ideonaut, Psychonaut, Noetic Nomad. So, and then you had like, and when you talked about like you helped build a community of like 1 million people. And I'm like, I have a community of like 150 people right now. But I mean, I'm going and I'm building it and I'm doing it. And like you're designing. So I don't know, like maybe I should be asking, like, do you have any specific, I don't even know, like what I mean, basically I'm just like, whatever you're transmitting, I'm just like downloading it and trying to integrate it, because I know you got a lot of knowledge and insight on that. So I don't even know where to go from there. If you could speak to that in any way.
Well, I think the rules change all the time in innovation. That's why it's really, in a way, it's difficult, but it's very interesting. But before, it's like throw some marketing, throw some ads, throw this and that. But now the game's changed, and it's changing again from, I think, economy of attention, of like I spam, just surface level. Now you go deep. Now it's time to go deep. I think it's like the expectations of people constantly change. So you have to constantly change how it's done. And you see like a format like Joe Rogan, who would have thought that he will have gathered so much attention? So for me, I think the gold is here. It's like, so people, they're addicted to sweetness, it's like feels good. Always give me some feel good. Always work. And that's why people are addicted to, like likes and whatnot. But it's okay. You have to make people feel good. Yes. Which is sometimes Rebel Wisdom. It's like, oh man.
Yeah, it's not very bright over there. Yeah, very dark.
No, I mean, because it's like skepsis, it's like skeptical, but it's okay to be skeptical, but bring in the mystic. You're a mystic. That's why I believe, like a mist. Skepsis is from the top, is convergent energy. It's like selection. Like from this, like you go into the field of possibilities. Bring a flower, like a new, like something new. Like as well, if you want to compete in the space, you have to do something new and different that people want. Just do something people want and that they're not having. Because if they can be served by something else that's already there, that's already popular, you're not gonna win. But I think just be you and give this beautiful energy, because in a way, it's a lot about you, about the quality of the question, the quality of the research that you do, your passion. My advice to you is not like marketing strategies and tactics. It's more like think about your role as like a modern shaman as well. A digital shaman. It's like you're a catalyst for change. And people want change. We need change. We're starving to change this fucking world. Who get us to do things we don't really want, meaningless stuff. We get to live in boxes, and we stop thinking. Now the young generation is like, okay, maybe we got fooled. Maybe let's start to think again. Let's see what's out there. So, but don't worry, because now you don't have much, because it's like things go exponentially. Like quality matters a lot. Quality. You keep doing quality. Okay, maybe perhaps an advice is like, make sure you have good lighting system.
Yeah. Okay.
On your face, and it looks like pro. Because I like it a bit like the way it is right now. It's like it's not perfect, but people have some expectation of professionalism. If you don't look professionalism, either or like I did, look the exact opposite. So for instance, sometimes, innovation is completely unexpected. So let's say if I put something like this, it's like, obviously I'm taking the piss. Like, oh.
Yeah.
But it's got some kind of emotional connection to it.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, what emotional connection you want to create in people? Most emotional connection in other channel is like, okay, wisdom, which is great. Huh? I love wisdom. I get a lot of it. But here, I think you have the opportunity to bring something else. It's not only wisdom, but for me, it's also like speculation. Speculation, we need more of. And that's why I say idiotic, because philosophers now, they like love the truth. Okay, but you have to be willing to take risk, ideologically speaking, and say maybe this, maybe that. I don't know. But all the philosophers that we remember now, they were not philosophers, they were idionautes. They were putting something new into the world that perhaps is stupid, perhaps is not. But if it's not considered crazy at the beginning, it's not disruptive. It's not considered crazy, it's not a paradigm change idea. And that's why I'm very interested in paradigm change idea. Ideas that are gonna, impregnate someone's mind like a seed, and then the seed grows, like ideas like a seed, and now it's gonna go with this one and then create a flower. You got so much power, actually, soft power, if you know how to set the right thing to the right people. And be the one actually who brings the right thing from the right people. And they're not always the expert, the PhD, Harvard, whatnot. Exactly. Not always.
Yeah.
Anyway.
What you just stated is like pretty much everything that I'm trying to do. And like if you look at the first episode of Noetic Nomads, I was like, why did I do Noetic Nomads? Because right now we're just perpetuating the same like one-to-many, like game a dynamic. Oh, we have an expert trying to tell everyone what the rules are. It's like, no, I want to bring amazing people with these who are on the ground with these crazy ideas, which are not quote unquote mainstream acceptable, but like is what is needed. Like a Max, like what you just. Like, man, what you said on this episode is just blown my mind, and like it just synthesized 8 million different things that I could freaking talk to you for hours. I don't know if they want to listen to an 8-hour conversation or like a 3-hour conversation, but like there's like something else. There is something else that like I definitely want to get into before we go. And that I came across your Medium article, right? I believe it's titled The Perilous Journey Towards Enlightenment. And I was just like, wow, like when I went over that, I was like, this is some crazy journey. I don't even know how to take it. And like, I guess like, and one of the things you stated is like everyone has their own journey of enlightenment. And like, I don't even know where I would fit in that realm. I feel like I'm okay, but I don't even know. And everyone has their own. Like there was a on the Stoa. Frank Yang was on there. He supposedly reached the quote unquote high state of enlightenment, but it's like his own state of enlightenment. So I was just wondering like, what it was that journey like, and like, and also like another thing maybe that you could throw in is your work with the Inner Fight Club. And how you supposedly in a couple hours transforms people's lives more than like, you know, years and years of psychotherapy. So I'm just wondering if you could just go into that a little bit.
So enlightenment, I will not say that I'm there. You know, I'm not there. I still have some way to go, but I can feel I'm going somewhere. It's like, it's interesting, but what makes me believe this is like, so I've got magnets in my hands.
Yeah,
well, so it's good for the electromagnetic field, you know, to flow. And it's like I realized I've got so much blockage in my body. I went to see like a chi master, and he saw me and he was like, "Whoa, I like so much blockages in my body.
Wow,
like 90% blocked.
Wow,
it's a bit crazy. That's why I was so tired. So something. It's like I got to do something about it. And I think my first. Maybe it was a glimpse of what enlightenment is, because it's like, how do you describe the ineffable? But when I had an ayahuasca experience, and a part of the work I want to do is kind of educate people around psychedelics. It's like the kind of how do you prepare your journey? You know, so okay, you put some music on, but what is it you exactly do? And the core is funny, but like for me, the best process to go at the truth, which we get, you know, the origin of science. Okay, British people think it's John Locke. I think it's Descartes. Descartes gets lots of bad rap, but you know, the method, first the Cartesian, you know, model, because separation body-mind, but it's like a mistranslation. Descartes was also, you know, an alchemist, but it's a model of understanding the world. You know, like a separation body-mind, yes, it's just a model, guys. Just get over it. Yeah. Anyway, but Cartesian method is, I'm gonna get this guy to do this experiment. This guy who doesn't like this guy, do the same experiment. They don't know each other. This guy who try this, do they find the same thing? Yes, okay, there's solidity, there's validity into knowledge. What a brilliant idea. And that's the basis of science. It's like we do peer reviews to make sure that there's solidity into a claim that is being made. The problem is, you know, there's lots of articles that are written and meta-analysis that are not trickled down into everyday reality of people. So for instance, they do meta-analysis of what is the best way to heal people. Hypnosis, hypnotherapy. We know this since 2005. You know, it's been published in 2010, biggest study around, you know, what we call drugs. And then so social harm, done in UK by Professor David Knott, social harm and personal harm. Right on top, you know, one of the biggest, not the biggest, alcohol. Alcohol comes from the Arabic al-ghul, which means spirit eater. Alcohol eats your fucking spirit. That's why we say spirit. Drink your poison. Yeah. Wow. Man, alcohol is the worst. You know, that's why when you remove it, you understand the addiction that people have. All the Al Capone and the gangster wars were due to the prohibition of alcohol. Alcohol makes people violent and sociopathic. And they make like a Joker. You know, they make like joke. You know, The Shining, Stephen King, all his terror comes from his dad who was an alcoholic. You know? Alcohol, terror of the mind. It dissociates you, and then you have to keep drinking just to get by. Bad idea, bad idea. We have to acknowledge the fact that humans, like some animals, even deer take mushrooms, magic mushroom, to enjoy themselves. It's a God-given divine right, natural right for you to take something off the ground, you know, mushroom that grows on cardone or whatever, and take it for yourself, especially if it heals you. Now we know it heals you, but you know, the laws haven't been updated because, I don't know, maybe the politician is going to put it forward, he's going to get lots of bad raps. And that's one of the things, at least in the Transhumanist Party UK, not US, evidence-based policy making. That should be the basics. Take your decision based on evidence. No politicians fucking do this. It's stupid, no? Yeah. Empathy, yes, empathy, love first, and then evidence. And then make some little test. Maybe learn from what startup do, because you have to adapt to change. Anyway, I forgot why I was saying this. And as well, so the Qatar, as related to this, in the churches, they painted big mushrooms, psychedelic mushroom with the figure of Christ. So those who claim, the reincarnation of the Essenes, and also the second coming of Christ was Sir Francis. So the Gnostic, there was like to become Christ, like Jesus and Christ is two different things. First is Jesus of Nazareth. You become Christ when you clear all the shadows in your body. You come into your light body. The Tibetans monk understand this. It's like, you deal with your shadows, but they have a different metaphor for it. The rainbow body. And then Carl Jung said, the place where you least want to look lies the thing which you most want to find. Yeah. So it's like, when you've got a trauma, what happens is like you dissociate. It's like your identity as a child is a big bubble. It's a bubble. But it gets influenced by other people's bubble. So other people fear into the bubble already. It's already a bit of a parasite. But especially a trauma happened to you, big or small. Even complex trauma is a series of small ones. Even nightmares. And that's the thing that made me believe maybe there's some negative entity, in charge of because nightmares traumatize you and you get it in your body. And so for me, I keep working with my hands, like kind of Reiki, and I keep removing all these blockages. And when you remove the blockage, the memory comes back. I know it's crazy, it's magical, you don't know how it works. For me, it's unfathomable, but it always works. Like you heal your body, it goes back into the mind. You heal the mind, the body liberates. It's a two-way. And it's okay to take shortcuts. You take psychedelics, you take ayahuasca in a good setting, good condition, and the process is very clear. I mean, if you want to be freed, if you want to reach enlightenment, is my perspective on the subject. So what happened to me is like, so I knew from Jung and also Joseph Campbell, in the cave that you fear lies the treasure that you seek. That's why in Star Wars, you go to the cave and he affronts his father, his own fear. Confront your fears, confront your pain, confront everything you don't want to confront, ideologically speaking. And for me, it was pretty hard shit I had to confront. And I give you one example because it's the kind of thing you don't want to admit. You have to see yourself as the bad guy. And Jordan Peterson talks about it. It's like you have to consider why would someone do something bad? And with honesty meters, I used to some people, will I be able to do the same thing in the same context? In another sense, have empathy for the devil. You need to have empathy for the devil, and also you need almost to have a psychopathy towards yourself, because always people say, "Oh, I'm so good, I'm fine, I'm great." No, you're an asshole who doesn't know you're an asshole. Yeah. Seriously, most people are actually passive-aggressive. No, seriously. It's like when you're educated into the non-violent communication, you understand how violent actually people are and how dismissive they are and how judgmental they are. But ayahuasca is going to come and say, well, you think, don't point finger at someone else. Sometimes you're the bitch, you're bad. And all you have to say is, I'm sorry, I'm guilty. And shut up. I'm guilty. I'm sorry for everyone I offended. In a way, it's like Jesus had some good wisdom. The process is this. Forgive others first, and then you can forgive yourself. Lots of people feel inadequate about who they are as well because they hold grudges. Get rid of all your grudges. And then the first thing, if you're in an ayahuasca ceremony as well, get rid of your fear of judgment. And I think that's the first step. In alchemy, there's like 7 seals to enlightenment. First one is fear. And but there are some tools that can help you. So silver, silver kills the vampire, as we say. Wear some silver and some amethyst. It's an advice, but energetically, it's going to help you deal with your fear. And then, in your mind, if it's given the opportunity, you're going to want to avoid going there. And for me, for instance, I was in trouble with my ex-wife at the time, and it was like a simulation in my head. Okay, what's wrong? What do I want to do that I'm not actually doing? And to be honest, she had mental problems, but she put a lot of it onto me, like hot potato. When you have lots of trauma, it's like, it's not me, it's you.
Yeah.
She showed me all her shit, and everything's my fault all the fucking time. And I got sick of it. And I was like, I'm not violent, I'm not. But it's like I had a kind of rage in me that needed to come out. I was not happy about it. Like years of just handling, yes, okay, almost like hostage negotiation. Cersei Lannister. And I was like, okay, simulation, no, I want to punch her. And like simulation is like, and then it's like, the devil goes away. I accepted the devil inside of me. And then I'm like, and then it's like the holy light comes. And I'm like, everything is awesome, but for real, it's like you don't know how good you can feel until you reach a new ceiling of human experience. And then it was like, everything is so fantastic, just the way I feel so good, so beautiful, so... And my focus becomes from like very tiny to like huge. I see all the room, but everything at once. And since then, it's like my senses redeveloped. And after that, it's like, there's no way I go back. I quit my job, and then I go help people, and I cannot stop wanting to help people all the fucking time. It's like it's a good pathology in a way.
Yeah.
I just want to help. And some people are like, sometimes they're afraid. They're like, who's this guy? Is unreal. No, but really, there's nothing that will make me happier, more fulfilled as an individual to have help someone else. But so after what happened to me, like shit, I did honesty meetups, and then I realized, fuck, so many people are living a life of quiet desperation. Like publicly, everything is fine. But the damage, so many women have been sexually abused that they do not speak. So many men are sexually frustrated. They feel bad about themselves. They're mistreated. So much horrible shit. Then it brought me completely, fuck. Like it's like you have your own cross to bear, you get rid of it, you have a bigger cross, and there's no choice. It's like, fuck it, you go back to purgatory. And then I was bad after. And I'm trying to get my way up, but then the justice system gets into me, and my ex-wife is like, fuck. Give me peace and give me a fucking break.
I completely resonate with everything you said there, especially when you said, okay, I'm good. It's like I was just talking with my friend Tia, another episode, I was just like, yeah, it's like, like over the summer I did my shadow work, inner work. Okay, I feel so good. I'm about to launch Noetic Nomads. Like I feel good. I feel like a Hindu cow. Nothing can bring me down. And then I launch it. I'm like, oh my God, it's like a trigger. No, they all hate me. Nothing's ever gonna happen, right?
Yeah.
Like, shit. And then we go to another stage, like, okay, I'm like, my podcast is going, like, I feel okay about it. And then 2021, it's like, and then all of a sudden, I'm trying to build a community in order to to inspire everyone to start their own projects, help them create and bring their own gifts to the world, right? And I was like, I'm just gonna do it like step by step, one episode at a time. And then a couple of weeks ago, I get the offer from Peter of the Stoa to like, hey, I'm gonna shut down my Discord community, which has like 700 members. Would you be all right taking them on? I was like, okay. And then the next morning they just start flooding in, and now managing this big community, this growing community. I'm like, oh my God. And it's happening again. But yeah, I completely with that. And like, there's something that I'm interested about, like you mentioned, right? And this is something that has been going on in a lot of these spaces, something that I'm very cognizant of, and that people have been speaking to me about is like, you stated that like, like you in like your Twitter, you posted like, I'm a vacuum cleaner for people's negative energy, right? That you're told that like because like you're like this shining person that like you maybe cleared up some blockages. This is what everyone just starts projecting onto you, right? Monica actually spoke to me very recently about how now that you're stepping into this role, like people can start projecting onto you and you're going to have to set boundaries. Cause right now I'm just letting everyone in. I'm like, hey, everyone, welcome to the community. Right. And then it just like, they just boom, boom, boom. It just, they just keep contacting me. It's like, okay. Yes. It's like, I just like, what are your thoughts? What is your process to dealing with all that's going on with handling, you know, like the possible projections and whatever come in our way?
Well, the way I think it works is that, you know, in a way, I think it's like flies are attracted to the light, you know, and I'm afraid to say it because it's like, it will mean that I think, you know, that I'm a shiny person and whatnot. I've heard it from someone else too, from Master O, which is like a master of Shi. I'd like to believe I'm a good person. Like I've done so many things for people. I'd like to give myself, you know, like sometimes in society, you cannot also say some good things about you.
Yeah,
I think it's a humility trap because humility for me is not saying good things about you. Because in UK, it's like so much self-destructive humor. Nobody's happy about who they are. In the US, it's the opposite. US is kind of narcissistic, a little bit too much, but at least you got people who, it's okay, I'm cool, I'm awesome, I'm fine. It's okay in the US at least. You know, to let in the light. America, no one has a monopoly on goodness, but in UK, it's like it's so much self-deprecating, and you have to be humble and so annoying. But at least if you know you don't know, if you're willing to accept that you don't know everything, for me that's humility. For me, For me, saying bad shit about you or not saying good things about yourself, even though you think it, or even though maybe you've deserved it, you know, because you've done good things, is shooting yourself in the foot.
Yeah.
And actually, one of the ways that I help people, so I was saying, so in our Fight Club, but I'm a hypnotherapist, I just suggest the idea, but it's not I just suggest, but my energy, I think it's the practice of Jesus. It's mesmerism. Mesmerism is hypnosis without words. So what they call animal magnetism. So magnetism, so you can use your eyes, your hands, power of your hands, and your intention. And you can heal people like this, with no words. But it's as well like the channel, you know, like as a healer, you clear your own bullshit. If you have genuine intentions, you know, it's not like I'm gonna make you pay XYZ bucks. We know that there's a very high correlation between, it's the quality of the practitioner that makes most of the healing. Be it a psychotherapist or a hypnotherapist, it's actually the person who's helping you, so they genuinely care about you, is going to be the biggest predictor of how you're going to be healed, actually.
Yeah, I've heard
so,
that.
You know, doctors who go because they want to make big bucks. I think healing should be free for people. Like maybe you pay people like a Christian church instead of priests, make them into healers. Go heal people, heal their trauma, listen to them. Confession is a good thing. So that's what I realized. So, and this through also Jordan Peterson work and Joseph Campbell, the truth will set you free. It's literally true. It's like express the unexpressed. So there's a different channel to do this, but it's like the thing that you're afraid to confront. Maybe you've been abused. Maybe you abused someone, or maybe it was your fault. Maybe it was. Especially when it's your fault, it's difficult to confront sometimes. You know, when you're an asshole, it's difficult to confront. It's like you have to admit it, and you can never be perfect, never ever. But what you can try to do is work on your intention. Like, are my intention always good with people? Am I really the good person that I believe that I am? Well, I went in Glastonbury, do my research, and it's always a cockfight. You know, in any context, you know, like what you said in Rebel Wisdom, until you've healed your wounds, you're still in what I call, you know, the narcissistic bubble. This expert on narcissism said it's a developmental disease. It's like as a child, between the age of 0 and 3, you're in complete receive mode. So in a theta wave, so theta in a hypnotherapy, we put you in a alpha wave or theta wave, and then we rewrite the script. So you see, before the age of 3, it's so important what you receive as energy, and you receive love. But tactile love as well. And so to heal people, the best intervention is like I give them love. And that's just a simple thing like you're loving, you're worthy of love, you're lovable, you radiate love and respect, and in return you get love and respect. You give love to others, and in return you get love. And it's like equivalent exchange. You forgive others, you forgive yourself. You know, it's like a simple wisdom. You know, we think how you solve the world, complex, no, simple wisdom. You know, hypnotherapy is the spiritual alchemy, which is the original alchemy. It's the same. The occult use it in different ways. They traumatize you, and then they use hypnosis to like, I'm your savior, but then they get you in whichever direction they go. So that's how you dissociate someone, then you can make them their puppet, but you cannot control someone with hypnosis. It's them who decide whether or not they're going to accept your suggestion, except if you've got no other alternative, you know, like the CIA, you know, like traumatize you, then they're going to take like a savior and you're going to reshape your belief because, well, you just can't deal with anything. So one of the induction, for instance, is hypnosis. It teaches you a lot about the human mind, but it's like this slow induction, so baby step, you go down. This fast induction is confusion. So it's like, oh, look at this, look at that, you're confused, and sleep. You know, like the right moment. So I didn't do it in synchro, but it's like, if I confuse you, your brain doesn't know how to make sense of everything, but you've already trusted my voice. You're gonna rely on this anchor of like, okay, who's the savior? So that's why the media are doing like, get your attention. So I work at Time Inc., you know, Time Magazine, Marie Claire, all of this. And so, wow, they do investigative journalism, Time Magazine, probably, no. You see, but the problem is they dramatize the information. So you have facts. Facts are facts, and it's just what happened. And then there's the interpretation of the facts. It's just a story. And then all the adverbs you're going to use, the metaphors, are going to create some emotions into the mind of people. Or the kind of picture you're going to put, going to create an emotion into the reader. And we are only programmed to care about things that, you know, have an emotional connection with. But the one that parasites everything is fear. Like survival, forget love, forget everything else. And so we're constantly put into a state of fear, in a state of you're not good enough just the way you are. And we have mirror neurons as well. You know, we're not that adapted to live in the big societies that we are. We're adapted to live in small communities of 150 individuals. But it's like, now it's like the standards from which you compare yourself to, you know, because you think of your own individuality, it's like a mirror. It's like, I see you, but how I see myself is the difference between you and me. So let's say, hypothetically, someone is there, you know, in talent or in something, and you're there. You have two choices. It's either acknowledging your position, well, I'm not as good as this person, or you try your best to find some psychological fitness. So it's either you be humble, it's like, you know, bitch, be humble, I mean, you're not Elon Musk, not everyone is Elon Musk. And to accept it, you know, no, you're not perfect, but it's okay. It's okay. No one is perfect. No one. Yeah. Even Elon Musk is not perfect. Anyway, but we all shine our own lights, our own beautiful lights. That's what you need to understand. Perfection is a dangerous idea. And it's like, me, I'm smart. Sometimes fuck you all. I'm very aggressive and I'm not the most patient. I'm not always the most, you know, like there was this girl in the company I was working, she's the flower queen. And it's like everyone has got their own light, you know, as a child, like we all shine a different light. And then that's why enlightenment is different for everyone, because, you know, it's like the trolls, you know, when the trolls, you know, go dark. Yeah. No, actually, I'm kind of like the dark troll, actually. But everybody shine a different color, and that's what's beautiful. But that's what you need to get back, and to get people to really take ownership of their own beautiful light, which they're deprived of. It's like, you know, the societies put you into a box, a bubble, like a Pokemon ball. No, don't get out of your Pokeball. No, don't go free. Like, you want to go free, you want to be Pikachu or whichever Pokemon you are, but you can't, because it's like, stay in your Pokeball, just do what you're told. And it's not an enforcement that's very easy to notice, because like, where are the barriers? No, it's a psychological barrier. You know, it's like when you train dogs, If there's barbed wire that's electrical, with horses, they touch, they're gonna stop. But then you remove the electricity, it's just a wire, not even barbed wire, just electrical. They're never ever gonna touch the wire again. They could escape potentially, but they don't. It's like the fear that's the blockage for the horse. Huh? It's like the fear that blocks them. Huh? Yeah. Even if you remove them, they're not gonna run away. They're tamed. We're tamed. As humans, we're all tamed compared to who we were as children, which is like, I do whatever I want, I peace here, I'm naked, I'm fine. Yeah. And now it's like, you see, that's the problem of Christianity as well. It's like we're so feeling inadequate about our own bodies. Like being naked is just nature, but now it's like, oh my God, huh? Like violence is fine, guns, blood, no problem. Huh? But in the US, it's like, you see a naked body of a woman, oh my God, blasphemy. Yeah. Come on, and that's why I think we have a very strange relationship to our own bodies because it's always sexualized. So as soon as you unveil, it's like then it's sexual. No, you see, your cat is naked. Monkeys are naked, they're fine. So there's so much education that we have to do. It's like, so for me, the holy grail of design is not you create a product that you want people to learn and adapt. So I'm gonna change my habits to adapt to it, which is what society is. Huh? So we format people to adapt to the way society is. Now the opposite should be true. It's like, it should be the rules of society, which is just design. We design, we co-create the reality around. There's the rules of reality, tangible rules, and then there's the rule that human beings imagine in their head. This idea of capitalism, this idea of democracy, it's all started in the mind of someone. So we can all start something new, a new game. Enough of the monopoly. Monopoly, it was designed as well as a game to educate people as to, the danger of capitalism. But at the end, there's only one winner. Huh? And you see it now, it's like, the winners are winning so much more and we're going more and more and more towards like winner takes it all. When are we gonna say, oh, come on, guys, come on, share a little bit? I mean, seriously, how much do you need? How many toilets do you need the best one? You got one ass. How many space do you need? And it's even proven that if you live in too big a space, you feel depressed. So it's like all those stars in Hollywood, they live in those big houses. They actually feel shit inside. I work as well with Warner and UMG, so I've got to learn a few secrets, Man, the celebrities that you see, you think, oh, they're so happy. No. The whole world that we serve you is just packaging, basically. It's just packaging, good packaging and shit inside.
I know, exactly. Oh my God, Max, anyway. This is I've never had a conversation on here yet where you synthesize everything. I was like, boom, boom, boom. I gotta talk to you 8,000 things, ontological design. I mean, the whole point of Noetic Nomads is I'm trying to bring everyone's gifts, show everyone, I bring my guest on. I'm like, this is why I have my intro where I'm like, this is you. This is boom, 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 boom. Build you up. It's like, this is you. The world's like, oh, this is you. And then when we know what our unique gifts are, our specific light, then we go like, oh, this is what we could bring to the world. There's no us. There's only one me. This is when we can shine. So
yes, we should all be allowed to do it. The world will be so much better. You need a safety net for people. That's why we've been saying also Transhumanist Party, at least, UK again. Don't put all people in the same. Don't be too caught up into the label. Okay. Universal basic income, basic safety. People do not have psychological safety at all. So we think about fulfillment and entertainment. In fact, people are so addicted to entertainment because it's a coping mechanism. That's why we put clowns in hospital. No, but to get away from the pain, because it's bitter. There's the truth is bitter. But you have to go to the bitterness that what heals. A salad, well, it's kind of bitter, but it's what heals. Or lemon. Actually, the lemon for the Gnostic is the fruit of knowledge. It's the lemon.
Oh, the lemon.
Because it's gonna heal your sugar addiction. It's gonna reset your taste bud and heal your inside. You take it, you're in a ketogenic mode. Your body armor, your blah, blah, blah. And then if you burp, it's great. You know, like people say, oh, I should not burp. No, the best shaman is the one who knows how to burp the most. Because it's like this kind of a barrier. It's interesting, but it's like from energetic one into the air that goes through the burping. I know, it's crazy, but it's like it needs to come out, let it out. You know, people are afraid of vomiting, and no, it's great. Actually, ayahuasca, you want to throw up. And in a way, it's like when you throw up, you feel so good. It's interesting, it's like, you know, that's why I think maybe it's the gut as well that holds a lot of the secret. It's like, maybe it's all connected, like our inner war is a bacteriological war, like all those bacteria that fight, and if you don't give good bacteria, you know, it's like, so find the right balance, but it's also, the war is also energetic, you know, in your body, so good massage, or, you know, energetic healing, yoga, that's why yoga, you break the armor, it's all you're doing. You break the armor in yoga, you know, so you stretch your body, stretch your mind as well. When your body is flexible, that's why they say Vata people, long people, air people. You know, it's like the Vata people ought to be the one that understand the rules of reality. It's always been like this. That's why the druid is very thin. And the earth people is more like big, thick earth. So I did not understand this before because it's like there's a hierarchy of people, some people better. No, it's not exactly like that. It's more like in life, there's a natural hierarchy actually. It's like natural alphas or whatever, but there's a good one. And so it's
like something it's a functional hierarchy rather than like a vertical top-down. Maybe that's what you're referring to.
Yes. No, it's more like, let's put people in the path where they belong. You know, like Asperger, for instance.
Yes.
You cannot treat an Asperger like a stereotypical because they don't think in the same way. Like a dyslexic, we think dyslexic are dumb because they don't know how to read. Dyslexic are the genius. And there is a process now to heal dyslexia. It's like you turn like a maze, like a pattern with some writing, and there's something happens because the dyslexic thinks in association. You know, great dot connectors, dyslexic.
Yeah.
Winston Churchill, Steve Jobs, you know, dot connectors, possibly Einstein as well. And all architects, you see like spatial representation. Dyslexic are so misappreciated. So after it's like, understand who people are, their specificity, but do not try to impose your own thing on them.
Exactly.
No, it's like, create the garden for which they are able to flourish. Don't try to cut them this, you know? And everyone is a different flower. Just let them grow the way people want to grow. Just provide a safe base. Just provide the ground. But we don't have a ground. You know, seriously, we've got so much stuff already. Even, you know, I lived in the forest for a bit. It's like, fuck, in the forest, you've got at least cranberries and raspberries and apples and mushrooms. You can forage. You don't need nothing to live. And you can take some woods. You can build a little house. It's nothing, or their case. But now, you can't even live, you know, anywhere without being chased by someone or judged by someone. Or, you know, you should be able to eat for free, to be sheltered for free. That's the very best. And we should think of ourselves as a tribe because that's how we think.
Wow, this has been amazing, Max. I literally, there are like 50 more questions I could ask, but maybe we could save it for another time. I mean, again, like I just started Noetic Nomads Discord community. I would love for you to join and talk. Like, I want to tell them all about you because you are Noetic Nomad. Like, talk about like whatever, you know, psychonaut, ideonaut. I mean, you're a nomad. So again, like, I'm so glad that I came across you and we got to talk. So where can people find out more about the great Max Gosselin, the Noetic Nomad, ideonaut, psychonaut?
Well, I don't have much at the moment because I was like in a divergent mode. So I think life is left brain, convergent, you know, bring things together, Asperger, right brain, divergent, you know, artist, schizo, whatever. And life is like this, like the flower of life at the bottom, sending lots of V's. You see vortex, like, you know, the fabric of reality is V. And at the top, it's like, let's put those V into some harmonious ways, you know. It's like the order. But I think idea of a single God is a bad idea. You know, it's always balance. There's never one thing without something else. No, it's like yin-yang, relationship, whatever. So anyway, you can find a bit of my work on psychosoft.com, Psycho, where I do offer hypnotherapy for donation. So you donate what you feel.
Yeah.
And I think I have a Medium page as well. Maybe you will put the link.
Yeah, I could
But
put
I
that
think
on
I
the
want
show
to
notes.
start a series of idionotic. So I want to create this new science of like, because I think philosophy is very sterile nowadays. It's like, it's not very daring. It's like, what if we think, the meta game, the game beyond of like, how do you come up with the great ideas? How did Plato come up with their ideas? And you understand they were psychonauts.
Exactly. Yeah.
So if you have a good model for how to explore the ideological world and bring about, some ideas that are valuable and beautiful and package them together into something that the world needs. So I say ideological design. I'd like to think the future is ideological design, and I don't want to be the only one at it, because it's like we could all make speculation. Well, if you put this idea here and that and that and that, you can have this beautiful symbiosis. That's why I'm saying redesign religion. It's a bit provocative, but the idea is like, perhaps we can create a manufacture, but invent, put together, maybe it's me, put an intention, it's okay. It's just a proposition. It's a proposition, why not? Be speculative again, be exploring uncharted ideological territories.
Yeah, that is.
So I want to do a series on that and invite people to go be crazy. That's why I love you, man, because you say, oh, here I'm crazy, I'm the crazy, yes.
Yeah, exactly.
My people, noetic nomad, you see, like nomad of the mind. Exactly. And I think that's a great way to be. I think being narrow-minded is a disease. I think you're a narrow mind, you're a Lego, You're free in the way of thinking, you step out of your bubbles, ideological bubbles, you're free. And so let's be more of us, because I think it will make for a better world. Noetic nomads.
Exactly. That's it. That's it. Perfect close to the episode, Max. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing this knowledge.
I'm sharing with you, dude. You need to
Got it. All right. Okay, everyone. Exactly.
Let's create games where everyone can win. That's all we need to do.
Yeah, win-win games. And that's what we're all about, Noetic Nomads, inspiring, getting everyone to give their unique gifts to the world. And that's it, Nomads, for another episode. And peace out, everyone, and step up because the world needs you. Okay, bye. All right, and we are...